my ambition at that point was to build what I used to call back then the Toys R Us of the wine industry, which was I was going to open up 4,000 wine shops as early as 17 years old. I already knew what Apple Jacks was doing in the Denver market, what their margins were, what they were promoting. Like I was an interesting dude. So I was very passionate. I was going to change the industry. I was going to open up 4,000 stores. I was going to build the biggest franchise. I was going to sell it, and I was going to buy the New York Jets. That was the money. What happened was I took a weird turn, and this is when you and I start connecting in this room. I was in my dorm room my freshman year of college, playing Madden 94, dominating by the way, and my friend came in and goes, "You have to come and see this." And I'm like, okay. I go into a dorm room. Now there's a lot of youngsters in this room, but there's plenty of other people. How many people over the age of 38? Raise your hand. Big ups. You guys remember the world pre-internet, you know? And so I was in the dorm room, I walk into a room, and there's a bunch of dudes, like 8, hanging around a computer. Now, I'm 18 years old. I had probably at this point spent less than 20 hours on a computer in my life. We were so far away from computers like this, and so I knew nothing about it. I had a word processor to do my papers, you know, which I never did, but that's where I was at. I'm standing in this thing. It was the first time I heard the sound coo-coo-ch, that little thing, for all of you that remember. I say some big statement like, "Is this the information superhighway?" Because that's what we called it. I think I heard of it once on TV. And I'm sitting there, and literally, again, for the youngsters in this room, it's kind of like maybe the way you see VR now, where people stand around and watch people do VR. Like, that's what we did with this computer. I waited 3.5 hours watching other people navigate AOL before I had my turn to sit down and play on the computer. And within 7 minutes of being on the internet in my life at 18 years old, I landed on a forum where people sold baseball cards, and I said, holy shit, I can sell stuff on this. And so for me, that was my relationship with the web. 18 months later, after educating myself, after buying a lot of stuff and selling a lot of stuff on eBay and learning that whole world, I launched one of the first e-commerce wine businesses in America. I realized, holy crap, I don't need to launch 4,000 wine shops. I can launch this thing, and it's going to be what people do. Even though I wasn't a technologist and far from a tech enthusiast, I understood what you were gonna do before you were gonna do it. While so many people told my dad and me that I was an idiot and stupid and people would never buy wine from the internet. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever talked about WineLibrary.com in 1997, I went and spoke at a Chamber of Commerce event in town, and the guy on the panel with me was this is just so perfect. He was the head regional salesman for the Yellow Pages. And I'm talking about how people are gonna buy on the internet. And like, just to give you context, I've always loved doing Q&A. The first question was, okay, can you explain how you sell wine on the internet? So you have Wine Library, I know the store in Springfield. Do you take the wine and do you plug it into a wire and then it comes to my home? This is real life human beings asking this question. But by the way, as you're laughing, you're gonna ask and ponder questions about virtual reality that are gonna sound the same in 20 years. Like, you just have to understand where we were at that point. But the guy said something that made me really mad and happy and interested. At the end, it was only like 40 people. He's, you know, I give my whole spiel, you're gonna buy wine on the internet, this thing, I think it was still World Wide Web, did that. And he wanted to razz me because I was like, people are gonna do this, and he was obviously tried and true to print. And he said, by show of hands, how many of you in this room think you're gonna buy wine on the internet? And nobody raised their hand. And all these 40-year-olds thought they were razzing the 22-year-old guy, and I was super happy. I looked them dead in the face and said, you're gonna be historically incorrect. How many people here said that they would never go on Facebook 7 or 8 years ago and now have a Facebook account? Don't lie, raise your hands high. Raise them high, higher. You have to look around. This is what I live on, is, well, video works in digital if it's a minute or 50 seconds. People don't realize, you can make a shit Vine in 6 seconds, and you can make a great video for Instagram or Facebook or Twitter for as long as you possibly want. People will watch. By the way, if Star Wars announced their next movie was 4.5 hours long, there'd be a ton of people that were pumped. Like, if it's quality, you will watch. It doesn't matter the time duration. I figured that out very early on. And the other thing the other real reason it worked was the content. Meaning, not that I was silly and charismatic, it had a religious thing that really made it pop, which is, watch this. By show of hands, how many of you are into wine or have a family or friend member that's fairly into wine? Please raise your hands. Great. Means most of you are gonna know what I'm gonna say now. The second somebody gets just a little bit of wine knowledge, they become a straight douchebag. You're drinking the wrong year. Fuck you. So, because I knew that, I became one of the first media things, I guess, that talked to people about wine instead of down to them. And so between the content and the grossly underpriced attention, because nobody else was trying to put out long content in that platform, that helped grow my business. And then my career changed again. YouTube sold to Google for $1.6 billion, which for everybody, 10 years ago, is like, you think the LinkedIn deal was a big deal? Imagine if LinkedIn the other day sold to Microsoft for $1 trillion. Like, that's how big 1.6 billion was for something that most people didn't even know exists, to go to Google. I'm sure a lot of you remember, if you've been in digital, that was like, and I was like, my God, and I read an article about it, and in there it said angel investor Ron Conway was set to make tens of millions of dollars on his investment. And I had a moment with myself and I said, I was right about the internet itself. I was right about e-com, I was right about email, I was right about Google AdWords, I was right around banner retargeting, I was right about this YouTube thing. I'm pretty right, and it's been great. I've been able to grow this big business and my life has changed and we made it, but I might have something that could actually buy me the jets in a different way. So I don't know where Snapchat's gonna be in 36 months, but I can tell you right now, if you're trying to sell something to anybody under the age of 25 in America at all, the only place they live is Snapchat. There is no other place to get them. How many people here are retiring in the next 10 years? And I don't mean you're gonna crush it and retire. I mean you're fucking old and you're finished. Raise your hand. How many? 1, 2, 3. Mazel tov. I hope you enjoy fishing. Awesome. But for the 99.9% of you, everything that is going on in today's world didn't exist a decade ago. No smartphones, none of these social networks. Like, what do you think has happened in the last 10 years? By the way, that's foundational technology. The exponential growth that is built on top of that decade is going to be extreme. And so many people are doing the right thing for the current job they're doing, but they're not learning the skills for the environment that's going to exist. And there are many people here, especially in that sweet spot of like 28 to 45, that are going to be in very dire situations if they don't start speaking up and actually giving good strategic advice. Like, you're not going to get a good job in 10 years when everybody in that room heard you defending bullshit ad products. Because it was in your best vested interest this year. Nobody's playing the long game of this game. Everybody's so worried about what's in front of them, nobody's projecting. The reason I've been able to be successful is when Twitter and Facebook were popping, I wasn't worried what the ROI of Twitter and Facebook was in 2007. I was worried was I right in projecting that a lot more people's attention would be on it, and when that attention was there, it would become a commodity that was very underpriced. That has been the history forever. This happened, my friends. If you're as nerdy about this as I am, please go back and look at what happened in marketing from 1955 to 1963, when we went from the radio being our primary source of communication to the television becoming our primary source. We had the biggest shift in brands collapsing and growing from nowhere, and it was completely mapped back to who believed in radio, because that's, guys, romance is the quickest way to go out of business. Like, the market doesn't give a shit about how you got here. Just because you learned everything about banner and email, like, do you know how pissed I am that it keeps changing? I figured it out multiple times. I go to shit just stayed email and banner. I had that shit fucking pegged in 2000. Like, but the market doesn't care about you. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter that this is how you did it, or this is what you went to school for, or you've been working in this organization for 15 years and you finally have credit and this is your skill. They don't care. The market doesn't care. It just moves. And if you look back, the people that grew up listening to the ball game on radio, and so that's why they spent all their money on radio, because it felt good to them, they lost. And that is what we're living through right now. We are grossly underestimating how substantial the communication and marketing shift is in our society. There's nothing else. This is it. Wrap your fucking heads around it. This is the game. How many people here in every 24-hour window are always within arm's reach of their telephone? Raise your hand. Oh, weird. I would literally rather get stabbed in New York City and my wallet be stolen than lose my cell phone. I believe that social media is the worst brand in society. The number one worst positioned brand in the world right now is social media. Because for so many people here, when you say this word social media, it's this sprinkle, it's this appendix, it's this afterthought. It's a nice to have with everything else. It's not scalable. It doesn't convert. I don't understand the ROI. If you break down social media like a common human being with just common sense deployed, here's what social media is. A, for all the people that have been in the game for a while, all that social media is the new word we use instead of calling this Web 2.0. B, social media describes Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, all these platforms. You know, the platforms that represent 53% of all of our time on this device. Social media, my friends, is a slang term for the current state of the internet. And when you wrap your head around that and understand that truth, it gets a lot harder to dismiss it as no big deal. And this is happening, and this is where the attention is. And the big mistake is that a lot of people think that this is just a 14-year-old girl phenomenon. There's a lot of people in this room that don't think their customer is in here because they're not looking at the data. And they're not looking, even more importantly, in the culture shifts that we're living through. Let me explain. The fastest growing demo of taking selfies on Instagram are 40 to 50-year-old women. Literally fucking cougar selfies. That's a fun laugh, but now let's really wrap our head around why. Here's why. If you're lucky enough to be sitting in this room and you are at an age that you actually knew your parent at this same age. Let me say it one more time because I want to make sure you're really following me here. How old you are right now, if you were lucky enough when you were a kid, you knew your mom and dad at that age. If you're lucky enough to be doing that in this room. Let me make you one huge promise. You, at your current age, are acting substantially younger in your behavior than your parent did at this same age. We are living through an enormous youthification of our society, A, because of our health trends, and B, because of the technology shifts. You can't really exist in society, as many of you found out, even though you wanted to fight technology over the last decade, without being on some of these platforms. You have nobody to talk to, right? And so, we're living in that. You ladder on the fact that an enormous amount of millennial moms in their behavior would rather be their daughter's best friend versus their mother. And if you really look, do you know how many 50-year-old men are in this audience right now that never in their right, let me go a different way. You know how many 50-year-old men in this room 24 months ago had never heard of an emoji? And who in the last 24 hours have texted one of their buddies the poop emoji? Who do you think are going to be the Fortune 500 companies in 15 years? They're not going to be FedEx. They're going to be Uber. They're going to be Airbnb. Year-old range, who are going to be looked down upon by the market by only doing what they thought was the right thing in the short term of where they were. If you believe in anything I said today, you should not reconsume what I say, but if you believe that Facebook ads are a good buy, if you believe that Snapchat is a good strategy, if you believe that Pinterest can bring ROI, you cannot allow the rules of your agency or your company to dictate your behavior. You need to be on the record because being historically correct is your only insurance in the ever-changing landscape that is business and marketing. This is very, very, very important. I don't want you to go now back home and get fired for being too rogue, but well, I do. But because that would force you to actually start winning. But, what I do want is if you believe something, not to keep, nothing's worse than regret. If I'm right, it's going to taste a lot worse in 10 years when all the stuff you're being penalized for not believing in is something you actually believed in. You just didn't have the courage or the atmosphere or the backup plan or whatever the million other variables were for you to actually bring it up. And there's I do it in a non-polite way because I'm a Jersey immigrant with a chip on my shoulder. But you're more than welcome to bring your points of view on these things in a very politically correct, very polite way, but please, forget about the billboards thing. If you leave with anything, do not leave any of your thoughts and beliefs on the table over the next decade, because I do fundamentally believe that is the battleground for the next generation. Because here's the sad truth. When that boss of yours 2 rungs up goes to another company, and because they have enough of a resume to get a decent marketing job in a new company, they're not going to take you because you didn't say the right thing. But if you did say the right thing, you're the one that's coming along. And this is historic in corporate America, and it's going to be extreme in the next decade. So please stop being a headline reader.